Well, I've never done ashes in my life, and that's what she wanted. And then she wants me to do it and put the same thing.
He was once the face of America's most fearless bounty-hunting empire, but now Duane Chapman has seemingly vanished from the spotlight under a cloud of unanswered questions. The man who chased fugitives for a living is now the one everyone is trying to track down. What really caused his sudden disappearance from the front lines of fame? And is the truth far darker than anyone is willing to admit? Join us as we peel back the headlines, expose the hidden tensions, and uncover what really happened when the cameras stopped rolling.
Dog the bounty hunter has been in the news a lot lately and now is sitting down with ET's Kevin Frazier to talk about his daughter's claims that he is a quote-unquote racist and a homophobe.
The convict who reinvented himself. Before the blonde mane and the leather vests, Duane Chapman was a young man in serious trouble. Long before fans chanted his name, he was sitting inside a Texas prison cell, wondering if his life was already over. The story of Dog does not start with glory. It starts with a crime that would shadow him for the rest of his life. In 1976, Duane was convicted in connection with a murder in Pampa, Texas, after his friend shot a man during a drug deal that went horribly wrong. Duane was waiting outside in the car, but the law still came down on him hard. He was handed a 5-year sentence for first-degree murder, even though he did not pull the trigger. For a kid who already felt like an outsider, prison could have been the end of everything. But something happened behind those walls that, as the legend goes, flipped the whole trajectory of his life. Duane reportedly tackled an inmate who was trying to escape, and a guard supposedly looked at him and asked why a man with instincts like that was rotting in a cell instead of chasing fugitives for a living. Whether that exact moment played out the way fans recounted or not, the seed was planted. He served only 18 months and walked out a changed man. That murder conviction did not just vanish. It meant he legally could not own a gun, and it became the permanent backdrop for every single mess he got into later. Anyone who wanted to take a shot at him always had the perfect ammunition ready to go. Still, Duane figured out how to spin his time in a prison cell into a multi-million-dollar brand sold entirely on the concept of a comeback story. There is really nothing quite like converting a felony record into a lucrative marketing strategy. He leaned into that past instead of hiding it. He told anyone who would listen that he understood criminals because he had been one, and that gave his whole act a strange kind of credibility. When he sat across from a frightened fugitive and talked about turning a life around, fans believed him because he had walked that road himself. The redemption story was not marketing. It was the actual blueprint of his life, and it allegedly made hardened bail jumpers trust him in ways no badge ever could. How does a convicted felon go from a prison bunk to becoming one of the most recognizable crime fighters in America? And what single capture turned an unknown bail bondsman into a worldwide phenomenon?
But, you know, that was just the beginning of what it was for you, an extraordinary journey. As a kid, you went to church.
Yes,
you
sir.
were schooled in church stuff.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Most of us don't know that part of your life. We know that part in the middle, and some of that wasn't as pretty.
The capture that made him a legend. For decades, Duane chased bail jumpers in Hawaii and across the mainland with almost no recognition. He was just a loud guy with a Bible in one hand and handcuffs in the other. Then, one job changed everything. One fugitive, one foreign country, and one risky decision that made him famous and nearly destroyed him. The fugitive was Andrew Luster, heir to the Max Factor Cosmetics fortune and a convicted serial rapist who skipped a $1 million bond and vanished during his trial. While police, the FBI, and other hunters chased dead ends, Duane and his team tracked Andrew all the way to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, where they finally grabbed him in 2003. Andrew was sent back to the United States to serve a sentence that stretched well over a century behind bars. It should have been the proudest moment of his career. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. Bounty hunting is illegal in Mexico, and authorities there charged Duane, his son Leland, and associate Tim with detaining Andrew. Suddenly, the man who caught a monster was the one facing prison again. He was arrested in Honolulu years later and spent the back half of the decade fighting extradition that could have landed him in a Mexican jail cell. The case dragged on and on, hanging over his head like a storm cloud that refused to move. But the publicity also did something nobody expected. America fell in love with the rough, emotional, prayer-loving hunter who risked everything to bring a predator to justice. The arrest that nearly ruined him is the exact thing that handed him a television empire. Cameras had already been circling him before the Andrew Luster job, but that capture is what turned a regional curiosity into a national obsession. Here was a man with a felony record chasing down a wealthy fugitive that the entire justice system had failed to find. The story practically wrote itself, and network executives saw gold in it. The very legal mess that allegedly kept him up at night became the origin story splashed across every promo for the show that would soon carry his name. If the capture that made him famous also nearly sent him back to prison, what happened when the cameras finally started rolling? And was the family on screen as perfect as it looked? The empire built on blonde hair and Bibles. When the show finally launched, it became a sensation almost overnight. People could not get enough of the wild family who turned the chase for criminals into a strange kind of soap opera. At the center of it all stood Dog, and the woman who became just as famous as he was. The original series ran on A&E from 2004 to 2012, pulling massive ratings and turning the whole Chapman clan into reality television royalty. His wife, Beth, with her sharp mouth and unmistakable presence, was the heartbeat of the show. Fans tuned in for the chases, but they stayed for the marriage, the family fights, and the strange tenderness that ran underneath all the chaos. What made it work was that it never felt fake, even when fans suspected parts of it were staged. Dog would slap handcuffs on a fugitive 1 minute and then sit beside them, allegedly begging them to find God and turn their life around the next. It was part manhunt, part sermon, and people had simply never seen anything like it on television before. Behind the scenes, the money rolled in, and the family grew into a brand. Spin-offs, merchandise, and endless cameos kept the Dog name burning bright. For a while, it looked like nothing could knock them off their throne. The neighborhood tough guy from Texas had become a beloved American icon. But icons, as fans would soon learn, are the easiest targets of all. The show dragged the whole family into the mud with him. The kids were packed into the trucks for the chases, the daughters got their own camera angles, and the screaming matches at the dinner table became a bigger selling point than the actual criminals. People watching at home felt like they were part of the mess, like checking in on chaotic cousins every Tuesday night. That fake sense of intimacy made the franchise a goldmine. But it also meant that when the wheels finally came off later, the audience took the betrayal personally. Nothing binds a family together quite like exploitation and a shared cable network contract. What could bring down a show pulling in millions of loyal viewers every single week? And why do longtime fans still wince when they hear about the tape that leaked? The tape that almost ended everything. At the peak of his fame, when everything seemed untouchable, a single recording nearly burned it all down. It was not a fugitive who took him down. It was his own voice, captured in a private conversation that was never meant for the public. And when it leaked, the fallout was immediate and brutal. In 2007, a phone call between Duane and his son surfaced through the National Enquirer, and on it, he repeatedly used a vicious racial slur while talking about his son's girlfriend. The audio spread across the internet like wildfire. The man who preached redemption every week was suddenly accused of being the worst kind of hypocrite. A&E moved fast. The network pulled the show off the schedule, advertisers walked away, and civil rights groups demanded he be gone for good. For a moment, it really looked like the empire was finished. Duane issued a tearful apology, insisting he was ashamed and pledging to make amends. But the damage was serious, and the trust was shattered. Against all logic, the guy bounced back. The network actually put the show back on the air, and a lot of viewers just chose to look the other way. But a mess like that doesn't just scrub out. Years down the road, the same kind of ugly rumors started leaking out of his newer projects. It turns out, the big, tearful public apology was exactly what everyone suspected: a quick paint job to save a paycheck. Whatever the truth, the tape proved that the biggest threat to Dog was never a criminal. It was him himself. The scandal also exposed how fragile the whole empire really was. One leaked recording, sold by someone close to him, was enough to freeze production and send sponsors running. It showed that a brand built entirely on one man's personality could crumble the moment that personality slipped. From then on, every public word he said carried a new kind of weight, and his enemies were always listening, allegedly waiting for the next mistake to drop. For Dog, the betrayal cut even deeper because of where the tape came from. This was not a stranger or a rival network. It was someone inside his own circle who decided his private words were worth selling. That kind of wound never really heals, and people close to him say it allegedly made him guarded and suspicious in a way the cheerful television version of Dog never showed. The man who preached forgiveness on camera was learning how hard it is to forgive in real life. If he could survive a scandal that destroys most careers, what was the loss that finally broke something inside him? And why do those close to him say he was never the same afterwards?
Dog the bounty hunter and his wife Beth are opening up about Beth's shocking diagnosis. She has stage 2 throat cancer.
It's just like hearing someone telling you that you're going to die.
Losing the love of his life. For all the chases and controversies, the real story of Dog has always been a love story. He and Beth were partners in everything, and fans watched their bond on screen for years. So when tragedy came for the family, it did not arrive in handcuffs. It arrived in a hospital room, and there was nothing he could do to fight it. Beth was diagnosed with throat cancer in 2017, and after a brief period of hope, the disease returned and spread. The cameras captured her final fight in painful detail. She passed away in June of 2019 at just 51 years old in a Honolulu hospital after being placed in a medically induced coma. The tough, larger-than-life woman who anchored the whole family was gone. Dog was devastated in a way the public had never seen. The man who stared down armed fugitives without blinking could barely hold himself together. Friends say he stopped eating, stopped sleeping, and reportedly told people he did not know how to keep going without her. Only months after her death, his own heart gave out under the strain, and he was rushed to the hospital with a frightening emergency of his own. Grief allegedly pushed him to the edge. He spoke openly about feeling lost, and fans who had laughed and cried with the family for years felt the weight of it too. The Beth-shaped hole in the show could never be filled, and in many ways, the original magic died right along with her. Dog had survived prison, Mexico, and scandal, But losing his wife was a different kind of sentence. Their love story had always been the secret engine of the whole brand. People did not just watch a bounty hunter. They watched a marriage that felt real, messy, and stubbornly devoted through every storm. So when Beth was gone, something fundamental about the show was gone with her. Fans could feel it, and so could he. And the projects that followed never quite recaptured the spark that the two of them had created together on camera. How does a man rebuild after losing the person who built everything alongside him? And did finding love again bring peace? Or did it open the door to a whole new round of drama? A new marriage and a quiet disappearance. Nobody expected him to move on quickly, and many fans were not ready for it when he did. After decades with Beth at his side, the idea of Dog with someone new felt almost impossible. Yet life kept moving, and so did he, in a direction that surprised even his most loyal supporters. In 2021, Duane married Francie Frayne, a Colorado rancher who had also lost her spouse, and the two bonded over shared grief before building a life together. Some fans cheered for his second chance at happiness. Others felt it was too soon, and the comment sections filled with mixed emotions. Through it all, Dog insisted Beth would have wanted him to find love rather than waste away alone. Television networks finally got tired of the bleached hair and the constant backstage screaming. The giant network checks dried up, and the later projects died in development because nobody could agree on who to sue next. The guy who used to own basic cable suddenly became invisible. Fans keep asking the same question. Where did Dog actually go? It turns out, people eventually get bored with watching a guy in a leather vest chase down people who missed court dates. He resurfaced in unexpected ways, popping up during high-profile manhunts and teasing new ventures, then drifting out of the spotlight again. In 2025, he announced he was packing up and leaving Florida for a brand new home, keeping fans guessing about where he was headed. It felt like a man trying to outrun something, even if nobody could say exactly what. The contrast with his glory days was hard to ignore. There were no longer cameras following his every move, no network promos counting down to a new season, and no nightly chases beamed into living rooms across the country. Instead, there were scattered headlines, a few podcasts, and the occasional viral clip. The hunter who once seemed impossible to miss had allegedly become a man most people only thought about when an old episode happened to rerun late at night. Some fans wondered whether the constant moving and the quiet stretches were really about chasing new opportunities or about running from old pain. A man who had buried his wife and watched his empire shrink might naturally crave a fresh start, somewhere nobody knew his face. Whatever the reason, the restless energy that once made him a star now seemed to be carrying him further and further from the spotlight, allegedly searching for a piece that kept slipping out of reach. If he was finally finding peace and a fresh start, what unthinkable tragedy was waiting just around the corner? And why are people calling it the cruelest blow of his entire life? The unthinkable tragedy that shook the family. Just when it seemed the worst was behind him, life delivered a blow so devastating that no amount of fame could soften it. This was not a scandal or a career setback. This was the kind of pain that no parent or grandparent should ever have to carry. And it happened inside the walls of his own family. In a horrifying accident, Duane's stepson, Gregory Zecca, the son of his wife Francie, accidentally shot and unalived his own 13-year-old son, Anthony. The shooting happened at an apartment in Naples, Florida, and authorities described it as a tragic, isolated incident. There were no arrests, only an ongoing investigation and a family suddenly drowning in grief. Duane and Francie released a heartbroken statement asking for prayers and privacy as they mourned the loss of their beloved Anthony. The boy was just a teenager, with his whole life still ahead of him, and in an instant, he was gone. For a family that had already buried so much, this was a wound of a completely different depth. People who followed Dog for years struggled to find words. He had spent his career around guns, danger, and death, yet nothing could have prepared him for losing a grandchild this way. The cruel irony of a man defined by firearms and crime facing such a loss inside his own home was not lost on anyone watching from the outside. So what really happened to Dog the bounty hunter? He was never taken down by a fugitive or a courtroom. The truth is quieter and far sadder. A convict became a legend became an icon, and an icon was slowly worn down by scandal, illness, and a series of losses that would break almost anyone. The hunter is still standing, but he carries a weight no bounty could ever measure. So what do people think really happened to the man behind the legend? Was it scandal? Was it grief? Or was it simply the weight of an impossible life? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.